It is finally time, our dynasty rookie rankings. And today we're going to be talking about wide receivers. I'm ranking my top 20 wide receivers for the upcoming dynasty rookie class. Now, this is going to change. I'm recording this on December 19th. Some of these guys, I think most of these guys are going to declare for the draft, but maybe there's a couple that don't. And of course, this is going to change, especially near the middle to the bottom. Those are always going to change. Depending on where they get drafted and combine stuff. So it's still very early. This is a very early ranking. It's based off of, not just stats and analytical numbers, but also some game film that I've been watching. I've watched about at least two games for each of these prospects here. And so I'm giving you my early rankings and how I feel about these guys. Again, we're talking about wide receivers today. If you like Dynasty content, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. We're going to have a lot of it coming out during the off season. And even if you don't play Dynasty, it's good to get to know these rookies a little bit for the upcoming fantasy football season. Like I said, we are doing a tier list here. We are ranking in 20 wide receivers into 7 different tiers. And we're starting off with tier 1. Now, I've gone back and forth on if I want multiple guys in tier 1 this year or not. I'm still up in the air. For this video, I'm only putting one, and that is Tet McMillan. Tet McMillan out of Arizona this year, 84 catches, 1,300 yards, and 8 touchdowns. He's a big receiver, kind of old school, 6'5", 212, runs a 4.5, a low 4.5 40. We don't know the exact numbers, of course. I think he's the best receiver in this draft class, and almost everyone across the board agrees with that Tet McMillan is the guy, is the number one guy, and he could be a top 5 pick this year. He's that good. So to me, he's an outside receiver. He can kind of do it all. He has good enough speed. So Tet McMillan, to me, probably is a top 5 dynasty rookie draft pick. And there's a good chance he's a top 5 real NFL draft pick. So Tet McMillan, to me, is in that tier 1. And for this video, I have him alone. Now, I went back and forth on whether or not I wanted to put Luther Burden in there. However, from what I'm seeing, just my own personal analysis, and I'm not, an NFL scout or anything, but this is my own personal preference and opinion, but also from people kind of around the industry is, Tet McMillan is a potential top 5 pick, and Luther Burden's more of like a top 15 pick, right? Maybe he sneaks into the top 10. There's a chance. Luther Burden this year, 61 catches, 676 yards, 6 touchdowns. The raw numbers aren't quite there. But when you take into account the offense at Missouri, which seemed to have changed, he accounted for a huge percentage of the offense at Missouri. So even though he only had 676 yards, Tet McMillan accounted for 44% of their passing yards, which means they just didn't throw the ball a lot. They didn't throw the ball a lot. And Luther Burden, I still think the skills that were there, him and Tet McMillan were kind of neck and neck heading into the 2024 college season. Some people even speculated that Luther Burden could be like a Heisman candidate. I still think all those skills are there, and I still think there's a chance that he comes and goes into tier 1 before all is said and done. Emeka Egbuka, I also put into tier 2. Ohio State receiver, 60 catches, 750 yards, 9 touchdowns this year. He's 6'1", 205. He runs a 4.3, potential 4.3 flat. The dude is fast, very, very fast. And people have they're kind of back and forth on Emeka Egbuka on how they feel about him. I think some people expected a little bit more from him, given his second year at Ohio State was probably his best year, 74 catches, 1,150 yards, 10 touchdowns. And then, he never quite reached those levels again. And I think people get a little bit nervous when seeing that, kind of seeing, you want to see improvement each year. You don't want to see a big year, and then you don't want to see, kind of regression a little bit, negative regression or something like that. So Emeka Egbuka, I do have in tier 1. I think he's a first-round pick this year. I think teams are going to fall in love with that, with the size speed combination of Emeka Egbuka. I think he's a really good route runner as well. And I think he can kind of play all over the field, which is intriguing for fantasy. You got to remember, this is for fantasy rankings as well, and where these guys fall into the fantasy spectrum, right? So I think he can kind of play in the slot as well, which if he can play both outside and in the slot, that's really good for fantasy. Really, really good. That is my tier 2. I think all those guys, I'd be kind of shocked if all those guys aren't first round picks. I would be kind of shocked if they weren't. There may be 1 or 2 more guys that do sneak into the first round. Again, it's December 19th. Some of these guys are still playing, by the way. Emeka Egbuka, you're going to be seeing playing in the college football playoffs, most likely. So keep that in mind, that their stock could rise just from the college football playoffs, by the way, which start this weekend. Into my tier 3 here, I have the Stanford receiver, and some of the names on pronunciations and stuff, I have a hard time with pronunciation of names at times, but Elick Iomanner, I think it's Iomanner, if I remember correctly from his game film. I watch a lot of the All 22 stuff, so I don't get the broadcast name pronunciation, but Stanford wide receiver, 63 catches, 830 yards, and 6 touchdowns this year. Again, the raw numbers maybe not quite at the level of a guy like a Tet McMillan, which people might be a little bit concerned about. But, I think he possesses everything that he needs in order to be a complete receiver. He has the physical tools, in my opinion, to kind of develop into that outside wide receiver. He's strong. He's relatively fast. He's 6'2", 210. He runs in the low 4.4s. I think he can play on the outside, make contested catches. And that's kind of what I see from him. Now, again, I'm a little bit torn on should Emeka Egbuka be in tier 3 with Elick here? Should Emeka Egbuka be in his own tier? These top 4 guys, you can kind of move them around in the tiers and things like that. But I just have the Stanford wide receiver here in tier 3, and I have him by himself. Next up, I have tier 4. I have several guys in tier 4 here. I think most of these guys are going to be day 2 picks in the second round, most likely. Maybe one of them sneaks into, the first round. There's always a chance. And again, a lot can change. But I believe 5 guys in here. I have Savon Williams at a TCU. I see the rankings. By the way, once you get past these top 4 guys, in the rankings of these guys kind of go all over the place. So it just shows you where, one, maybe it's not as deep as last year and there's not as much of a consensus on who the top guys were. And also it just shows you that maybe you can find some value in these later wide receivers picked, because I think it's a little bit up in the air and there's a lot of different opinions on how people believe. But Savon Williams here, I have is my in my tier 4 here, 60 catches, 611 yards, 6 touchdowns, 6'5", 225. So he's big, just like Tet McMillan, runs a 4.45. And again, I think people just are teams are going to, as much as we as much as the new age wide receiver does translate over to the NFL now, the smaller receivers, people still love that big receiver and they still value that big receiver and what they can do on their offense. They still need someone on their offense to kind of be that big physical player, make contested catches, run, block, all that stuff. And so these guys are still going to be valued when you can find them, because they're a little bit harder to find, in my opinion. But to me, again, he's another outside wide receiver here. He has good speed. I think he's really, really improved as well just over the years. And I think teams really like to see that. Savon Williams, just the improvement of him. He's been at TCU since 2020, and he's improved each and every year. He's improved each and every year to where he is now. Again, the raw numbers, maybe not quite there, 611 total yards, but then you kind of look at it and TCU, they had a lot of receivers. There's going to be another receiver on this list, and they had a couple of receivers above Savon Williams in terms of yards and things like that. So they kind of spread the ball out. They had their number 1 guy who we'll get to, and then they kind of spread the ball out between 3 other guys. Moving along, a guy that people really, really like is the wide receiver from the University of Miami, and that's Xavier Restrepo. if you've been watching and you watch Miami, obviously they had a pretty good team this year. Cam Ward was the quarterback. He's going to go pretty high in this draft. Xavier Restrepo was his number one target. He had over 1,100 yards, 11 touchdowns. A little bit of a smaller guy, 5'10", 198. But there's some people I've seen rank him as high as their number two guy. That's like how widely regarded this guy is. Again, we have to think about a combination here of not just like talent as a receiver, but what can they develop into in terms of fantasy. I think he's a slot receiver. I think that's where he plays in the NFL. I don't know if he has the size and strength to play on the outside. That will be, we'll see if he does. But that's going to be one that we need to kind of monitor there. But 69 catches, over 1,100 yards, 11 touchdowns, highly productive at Miami. Played at Miami for 5 years, by the way. Has had 2 back-to-back good years. Started off his college career a little slow, but then back-to-back years of 1,100 yards, 85 catches last year. So Restrepo is going to be interesting. What team he goes to. I think he's going to have to kind of go to a pass-heavy team to him to be productive if he's only going to play in the slot. I think he has a lot of value. So he's a guy that I can see. He's a guy that I could see maybe going a little bit higher in the draft, but maybe that doesn't translate to where he goes in dynasty rookie drafts. Jaden Higgins is up next. Jaden Higgins, a couple Iowa State guys here, which is, they had a good team this year. They were undefeated for a while. Iowa State. But Jaden Higgins is the first one on here. To me, he belongs into this tier, into tier 4. Only 2 years of college work here. 87 catches, 1,183 yards for Jaden Higgins. He's 6'4", 215. Not as fast as the other guys. He runs a 4.55. I like Higgins a lot when you watch the film. Like, the film really jumps off, in my opinion. Again, I look forward to getting more and diving more into the film for these guys because, again, only got to see maybe 2 games for each player. So this is very early raw rankings, but I think he can kind of play potentially all over the field. He probably profiles more as like an outside X receiver. He played by the way, at like Eastern Kentucky for a couple years. So a smaller school, but like his ability to kind of, to kind of catch things outside the frame is just very, very valuable. I think there's a good chance he goes day 2. And yeah, I think he can play in the slot. He's very versatile in where he was aligning, and he was pretty effective from both the outside and in the slot, which again, I think adds value to his potential draft stock there. And then we have 2 more receivers that belong to me in this tier 4. Next up is another TCU receiver, Jack Besh is the pronunciation here. I know maybe it looks like Beck or something, but Jack Besh was the more productive receiver over Savon Williams. 62 catches, 1,000 yards, 9 touchdowns, 6'2", 215, runs a 4.55, so not quite as fast, but it's just super, super productive player. TCU having 2 receivers, potentially going as day 2 picks. Is always impressive to me. And people are going to you're going to see people fall in love with Jack Besh, in my opinion. He's kind of to me, he's a high floor type of receiver, right? Just like consistent type of player. He can, I think he can play out of the box. He can win in traffic. He's going to be a quarterback's best friend because I think he's a really good route runner. And I tend to lean towards, if you're a really good route runner, that's going to translate in the NFL a lot more than just pure athleticism. Take, for example, a guy like Quentin Johnston, who isn't maybe the best route runner, but has all the athletic ability to seemingly be a top tier guy. But, I think he's going to be like a quarterback's best friend, kind of profiles as like a wide receiver 2 at best for me, just moving the chain type of player. So that's why I do have him a little bit lower than maybe the other guys that have a little bit more upside to develop into a number 1 guy. But I think Jack Besh is going to have like, an 8-year career and just be a really good player in the NFL. And we'll see if he can develop into a little bit more than that. Of course he can. Of course it's possible. It's all about odds. And then the last one, who I think a lot of people expect to be a little bit higher, Isaiah Bond. Super, super fast 5'11", 180, runs a 4.28, played at Texas, obviously. I'm not as high on Bond as I am my initial thoughts on him, as I am other wide receivers here. And again, a lot of that does come down to their fantasy value. I think Bond is very, very valuable for an offense. Teams need consistent field stretchers. That's just how you build your offense. You need someone that can stretch the field. A lot of times that doesn't translate for fantasy value, and they're more valuable for an NFL offense. But the dude's a legit burner. If anyone's going to break Xavier Worthy's record, it's going to be him. I don't think it's going to happen, but if anyone was going to, it's going to be him. I do think, the size is always going to be a little bit of a concern, right? Can he stay healthy, and can he, go up against these tough, corners in the NFL, these strong guys and stuff like that. So a lot of it's going to depend on where Isaiah Bond goes. If he goes to a team that I think can really utilize him, and they turn him into a little bit more of a multi-role receiver rather than just a field stretcher, then I think there's going to be value. And what I mean by that is, are they using him all over the field? Are they using him in the backfield? Are they giving him carries? Are they giving him screens and stuff like that? Or are they just simply using him as a field stretcher? The latter is not going to be good for fantasy, but the former will be. And so a lot of it will depend on what team he goes to. I'm very curious to see. By the way, all these guys are in the same tier. You can order them however you want. I'm not saying Isaiah Bond is necessarily the last. It's just kind of, they're all grouped together, in my opinion. Well, also a little bit based on where I think they're going to go in the NFL draft. Tier 5, Jaylen Royals comes up first. Super productive receiver. A guy that if I had to choose one guy that's in tier 5 or later that could rise up my boards, I think Jaylen Royals is going to be that guy. 55 catches, 834 yards, and 6 touchdowns in 7 games for Utah State there. 71 catches, 1,000 yards, and 15 touchdowns last year, which led the entire conference, the Mountain West Conference last year. So just a super productive receiver. I mean, putting up 800 yards and 6 touchdowns in essentially a little over half a season is pretty impressive. He's 6 foot, 205. He runs a 4.38, a high 4.3s potentially. So I think Royals is a guy that the more I watch him, the more I could see him moving up my draft board for sure, or my dynasty. I guess I should say my dynasty rankings a little bit more. People are a little bit all over the place with Royals, depending on what sites you look at and stuff like that. So do keep that in mind. But yeah, I'm excited to see Jaylen Royals and if he can hopefully sneak into and be a day 2 pick here. Tez Johnson is up next. Another guy that you're going to be seeing in the college football playoffs, or you should be seeing him, Tez Johnson. Played in 11 games this year, put up over almost 900 yards and 10 touchdowns, which led the Big Ten, by the way, the 10 touchdowns. He's 5'10", 165. He's a burner as well. Runs a 4.33. Undersized, fast guy. So again, my only concern with those type of guys, they're elite speed. I think he's a really good route runner. Just my concern is what teams that I'm concerned more with what teams these guys go to, these fast, speedy burners. For example, Xavier Worthy. I was happy that he went to Kansas City because I felt like, they're going to use him the right way eventually. And they're kind of using him more recently. I didn't necessarily expect a whole lot, expect a whole lot year 1, or especially the first half of year 1. But will they develop him into a little bit more, and how are they going to use him? So these guys, I'm a little bit more concerned about where they go to than, let's just say, the pure raw athletic size speed combination receivers who have all the tools. They can kind of develop on whatever team they go to. Whereas, these guys, I think they need to be in the right situations. And Tez Johnson kind of falls a little bit into that category for me. Probably profiles as a slot guy. But obviously the speed is there. He's a good route runner. The size is always going to be a concern when you weigh, 165 pounds or something. Durability does kind of drop the ball a little bit too. Another guy that people are going to be all over the place on, Trey Harris of Ole Miss. The production's there. The raw numbers for Trey Harris are there. He's basically had 1,000 yards each of the last 3 years. 1,000 yards. He had 60 catches, 1,000 yards, and 7 touchdowns in 8 games this year, guys. In 8 games. So the production is just wildly there. Part of that's the offense he plays on. Ole Miss is just kind of a offensive factory a little bit. Good size, 6'3", 210. And again, people are all over the place here. He's another guy that I wouldn't be surprised if he did move up my draft board or my rookie rankings. And I'm willing to listen to, what other people feel when it comes to Trey Harris. But I've seen him as ranked as high as some sites have him as their number 3 wide receiver overall. And then they love him, the catch radius, the length, contested catch ability, the speed is good enough, strong hands. I'm a little bit worried about his ability to separate. And I'm always one that leans a little bit towards I like guys that can separate in college. If you can't separate in college, you're probably not going to be just able to separate in the NFL, especially if you don't get on the right team. Now, if you go to the right team and you go to a team like the Rams or the 49ers that know how to get their receivers open, that's different. But I'm just always a little bit lower on guys that can't separate as much, and I'm higher on guys that can, because I know if you can't separate in college, it probably means you won't be able to separate in the NFL. So I am a little bit worried about that with Trey Harris. That's why he's in my personal tier 5. And I have one more guy here. It's Torrey Horton from Colorado State. Also only played in 6 games this year, put up 350 yards and a touchdown in half a season. And he's 6'3", 185 and runs a 4.45. So he kind of is that mold of today's NFL receiver, not quite as big and tall as we used to like, not quite as heavy as we used to like, but a guy that, kind of fits a little bit in the middle there in terms of his size. He has good speed. Torrey Horton out of Colorado State probably plays and profiles as an outside guy. But I love his ability to get separation. So could his route running be better? Sure. Could it be more crisp and clean? Yes. Didn't run from what I've seen on film and read as well. His route tree was a little bit limited in college. So that's, maybe he's a little bit more of a developmental guy, but I think he has all the skills to kind of be there. We have 2 more tiers for you guys. Tier 6. These are guys that are probably day 3 picks. Maybe one of them sneaks into the day 2. So draft capital is going to be important here. Another Iowa State guy, Jayen Noel, 72 catches, 1,000 yards, almost 1,100 yards, 7 touchdowns. Also has the size, speed, 6'4", 215, runs a 4.45. I like Noel a lot, and it's just impressive. Iowa State, of all teams, had these 2 guys, receivers that are going to be drafted here. You just don't normally see that for them. For Noel, and I'm sorry, I said 6'4", 215. That was wrong. It was 5'11", 200. I was reading someone else's numbers there, but Noel is 5'11", 215. No, 5'11", 200. Excuse me. And I think I might have written Higgins's height and weight here for Noel, but probably profiles as a slot receiver. That's kind of the vibe that I get from him. I think he's going to be very valuable to a team. And what I like about guys like Noel is I do think they're going to get a chance. They're going to get on the field because they have a skill set that teams covet, that short area quickness, in and out of their route breaks and stuff like that. He does play a little bit bigger than he is as well. He's a guy that's going to get on, he has a good chance to get on the field and just because he has this, yards after the catch type of ability, quick in and out of his breaks that teams really do covet. A couple more here as we close out this video. We have Kobe Hudson from UCF. Another UCF was Javon Baker, UCF. Kobe Hudson this year, 47 catches, 770 yards, and 7 touchdowns. He's 6'1", 200. He's kind of projected to be slow. His 40 time is really going to determine, in my opinion, where he goes in the draft. If he can get into the 4.5s, into the mid 4.5s to 40-yard time, then I think he could bump up his stock just a bit. He's projected to run in the 4.6s, which is not ideal. You normally don't see receivers succeed running in the 4.6s, just to be flat out honest. It's possible, but it's just not as common. So we'll see. We'll see. The combine, I think, is going to be important for Kobe Hudson. Fun player, though. Definitely a fun player to watch. Again, put up over 750 yards at UCF. By the way, a team that only threw for less than 2,400 yards. So you're looking at, you're looking at about 28%, maybe closer to 30% of their team's production came from Kobe Hudson. So you always got to look at the percentages there and stuff like that. So Kobe Hudson, to me, probably a day 3 pick. We'll see what the combine brings for him. And then 2 more guys here in my tier. I have a guy that not a lot of people are going to be talking about, Pat Bryant, and then another Oregon receiver, Evan Stewart. We'll start with Pat Bryant. Don't know what his 40 yards is going to be. Not a lot of information on him. There's a lot of people out there, they don't even really talk about Pat Bryant. I think he's going to be like a sneaky value pick late in your dynasty rookie drafts. If he does indeed go day 3, 54 catches, almost 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns, 6'3", 200. Go watch Pat Bryant and his film. He's a fun receiver. I definitely think he should be talked about more. And I don't think a lot of people are going to be talking about him, at least from what I'm getting early on. Not a lot of people are talking about him. And then we have Evan Stewart, the other Oregon receiver, 50 catches, 600 yards, and 5 touchdowns. Another burner for Oregon. So I like Evan Stewart as well. I do prefer his Oregon teammate, Tej Johnson. Again, we will be seeing them in the college football playoffs, so keep that in mind. But Evan Stewart is a super fast player. He's probably going to be a little bit more of a field stretcher if he does play on the outside. And we'll see if he can play on the outside. That's going to be key for him. And then into my tier 7, I have the last 3 guys, Antwan Wells, Kyron Lacey from LSU, and then I think it's Caden Prather. I think that's Caden is how you say it. Caden Prather. These 3 guys are, they round out my top 20. Again, are there ever 20 receivers that come from a draft that are productive? No. Just some guys to kind of pay attention to. Antwan Wells, kind of a field stretcher type of player here. He was 27 catches, 500 yards, 5 touchdowns. Kind of a bigger player. I've seen people kind of rank Wells a little bit all over the place. So, maybe he's a guy that I need to go back and look on, but I think most people have him in kind of this range of kind of in the low teens, early 20s ranking. Kyron Lacey, another LSU receiver, not as good as the other receivers, but 60 catches, almost 900 yards, 9 touchdowns. I think he's an interesting one because I think he can kind of, and I can see him moving up as well. I think he can kind of move all over the field and do a lot of different things. And he's not just like this outside receiver that wins contested catches. I think he's a good route runner. I think he's really good with the ball in his hands. I think he's really good kind of in that intermediate level and after the catch and stuff. Doesn't have quite the speed maybe that you desire, but I think he can overcome with that just from his overall role and things like that. So, and then the last one is Caden Prather from Maryland. 56 catches, 600 yards, 4 touchdowns. We'll see what he does. Again, these guys are long shots to be anything, but just the guys to keep an eye on if they do start to rise. So that is all that I have for you guys here. My first dynasty tier ranking for wide receivers. We'll be doing this for running backs, quarterbacks, and tight ends, and then we'll be doing this overall and how these guys compare to each other cross-positional. Make sure to like and subscribe. Appreciate you all, and I'll see you all very, very soon.